Money conversations with your spouse can be tough, and they certainly can get a little sideways, but they don't have to be. In this video, we're going to explore some discussions every couple should be having to stay financially aligned, reduce stress, and really plan for a secure future together. And within this conversation, I want to make sure that we are doing it in a way that creates agency for both people that are involved. Because what I've seen in my life is a lot of the times there is going to be somebody that has financial skills to a certain degree, and then the other person that doesn't. And a lot of the times, the person that has the financial knowledge may kind of dominate the person that doesn't necessarily have that same level of knowledge. And that can also that can be hugely detrimental to the overall success of marriage or a relationship, because we know that money is inherently emotional. It can be incredibly challenging, and especially for somebody that may not be as confident with the conversation with money, they may feel stupid. They may not feel like they even have a seat at the table because they don't know what questions to ask. So today I want to frame it in the context of several conversations that you can have with your spouse. And this doesn't matter if you've been married, if you're just dating, if you just got married, you've been married for 10 years or 30 years. I see this with retired clients all the time where they've been married for 25 years and they've never even really had a conversation around what retirement looks like. So again, this isn't just for the new married person. It's really for anybody that's in a relationship that has shared financial interests. So with that said, the first one is an individual's relationship with money. And I really love this because this gets into kind of the emotional, the background of what money means to somebody. And this might be and I've asked clients this, and they're blown away. They're in their 50s and they've never been asked this question, and they've never even thought to ask their partner this. But the first is, what is your earliest memory of money? And this can elicit some really interesting stories about, the one time I received a penny or a quarter or something for doing a chore for my parents, and I was 3 years old, and I remember it because I felt so proud. It really it creates some really interesting stories. Or it could be a negative story. It could be, I remember a fight that my parents had about money or something like that. So talking about the earliest memory of money. And then another one that's talking about the conversation or the relationship with money is, think about your 13-year-old self. This is usually middle school, always an interesting time for a lot of kids. What economic social class were you a part of? Basically, were you one of the rich kids, or are you one of the poor kids, or somewhere in between? And how did you know that? And what was that experience like? And this is really interesting because, again, middle school is such an interesting dynamic time where we're coming into ourselves. We're starting to see those social dynamics occur. You start to see, take note of if somebody has, ripped jeans, not on purpose, or, faded jacket, or, maybe things that just, maybe are hand-me-downs or secondhand type of stuff. And we really start to make judgments about that. So I always think that that's a really interesting conversation. And then the last one is, as an early adult, what did you learn about money? So this is around, when people start to, they're out of college, they're kind of, they flew the coop, so to speak, from their parents. They're not part of the family, payroll anymore. And now they have to make their own financial decisions. What was that like? How did that impact them? What's that conversation look like now? And then how did that shape that relationship? And what I find there is, a lot of times that's where a lot of couples will have come together. And so this is where we start to see the meshing of those values. So they were always so independent forever, and now all of a sudden in their early adult life, a lot of people are, that's when they're first getting married and things like that. And this is where they're starting to see, oh, remember that one time when we first met? I took you on a date and I had like $50 in my bank account. So really interesting dynamics there, and kind of conversations around that. So that's the first place, is just understanding your relationship with money. The second conversation that you need to be having with your spouse is around budgeting and spending. And I'll phrase it in this way, and that is, does where you spend your money reflect your values? And I think that this is something that is really quite interesting because it kind of starts to get into our identity. Where do we spend our money? What if somebody didn't know you and they looked at your bank account and where you spent your money, whether it's that your, that's your credit card or your checking account or whatever, however you're spending money, and they looked at your receipts and they said, "Oh gosh, you spent money here, here, and here, and here." What would that say about you? And are you okay with that? And when you have that with your spouse, it creates a really open dialogue around what that looks like for your family. So I always remember one of my good buddies was living in Chicago, and he did a video about his business, and he told the person that he's a mountain biker and a skier and it made him seem like this really big outdoorsman. And he told me, he goes, "And Taylor, I hadn't gone skiing for like 4 years. So how could I say that I was all of these things?" Well, he then realized that he needed to up and move out of Chicago and move to Colorado, and he can actually do those things. And I say that because sometimes we identify ourselves with something, but we actually don't really even practice it. So in our budgeting and the way that we spend, that actually can be, "Oh, I'm a saver." And then you look and you're actually not saving any money. Well, then that could be a potential problem. But with your spouse, do this through the context or through the lens of no shame, guilt, or story. Meaning, okay, where did we spend money? Okay, great. We can talk about why we spent money at that particular place, but understanding and having a real conversation about where money was spent is really important, and feeling comfortable with that, and having an open discussion. And this is actually really where it can be important to have a financial advisor or some trusted partner be a part of these conversations, because it can get a little bit sticky. It can get a little uncomfortable. Well, hey, I know you like to buy handbags, or I know you like to buy shoes. What does that look like? How do you and your spouse, come to terms with that? Because one spouse might value something, the other spouse might value another thing. In my household, I have an interesting story where it's one of our family money origin stories, and it's around my dad was working construction, and he's always been pretty frugal. And my mom was a banker, and she was kind of the breadwinner, and my dad needed some new boots, and so he ended up going out and buying the cheapest boots. And my mom insisted that he should just go buy the nice boots, the regular, like the good Red Wing boots, and they were going to be more expensive. They were, this is the 80s, they were going to be probably $100. And he's like, "No, I'm going to buy the $30 ones." Well, a few month or so goes by, and the $30 boots fall apart. So he goes and buys another pair, and another couple months goes by, they fall apart. And after 3 or 4 renditions of this experience, my mom said, "Stop, go buy the good boots, because now you've bought these boots 3 or 4 times and they've fallen apart on you, and you've wasted all this money where you could have just invested in the good thing up front, and you could have done this." And what's unbelievable is I remember those boots. I think they still have those boots at my parents' house, and that was like 35 years ago. And my dad's worked those things into a pulp, and he ended up investing in the nice boots. And it was something that they had to waste money on. So they essentially bought those boots twice because they got the inferior product on a number of occasions, and they didn't just invest the first thing. And so those were a different value set that they came to that discussion with. One wanted the quality, and one wanted to not spend money and was going to give up on quality. And so that's just an interesting dynamic when it comes to two families coming together. The third conversation is understanding the investment strategy and risk. So this is talking about a lot of things. And again, this is where I think you need to have a professional involved in the conversation, because there's a wide world of investments out there. But this involves, how much cash do you want to have on hand? I had a discussion here recently with a young couple, and they both were savers, so there was some shared values there, but there was a different understanding of risk. The husband felt like we need to be investing this money, and the wife felt like we need to be having this money in cash, and her family taught her that cash was king. And the husband thought, well, investments are the way to go. and they were kind of at an impasse. And so we had to discuss what level of cash is appropriate. So how much is the cash reserves or emergency fund? How much is in there to keep it a safety net, but also not be too much to give up the upside potential and the opportunity cost of investing in quality investments. So having a discussion around cash. What does retirement look like? How much do you want to dedicate to save for retirement? When do you want to retire? What's the calculus there? What does that look like between the couple? Because if one person says, I don't really want to retire, great. And the other one's like, I want to retire yesterday. Then we need to understand what that might look like. And then also, saving and investing within that structure. Another part of that is just the overall investment strategy: stocks, bonds, mutual funds, real estate, crypto. What type of investments do you want to be investing in? And this is again where we need to get on the same page, because what I find is that a lot of folks will have an experience with where they invested, good or bad, that will then dictate how they invest in the future. So as an example, I experienced this a number of times where people don't want real estate, and they of course have seen all the growth in real estate over the years. But what's happened is that they had an experience, and this is usually 2008, 2009, during the GFC, the global financial crisis, and we saw real estate just absolutely implode, and the bottom fell out, and whatever term you want to call it. But a lot of people lost a lot of money, and now they are hesitant to go back into real estate. So that's certainly an impact for long-term and how investments are made. A lot of people are not into stocks or bonds or whatever. Understanding those dynamics is really important because it can inform how you create an investment strategy going forward. Another factor that goes to risk is how much life insurance you have. There are people out there that do not believe in life insurance, and then there's the other side that believes that they should have too much of it. In fact, I recall working with a client a number of years ago, and she was newly married, and her husband would not have a conversation with me. Just flat out, new husband I can do this myself. I'm smart. He was an engineer, whatever. He did not want to have a conversation. And I asked, what's your thoughts on life insurance? They were a young couple, and she said, he doesn't believe in it and we shouldn't have it. Well, through that whole experience, it really made clear to me that the husband was not open to other ideas and was kind of stuck in his ways, and also not really even wanting to protect his family. So a little bit of an interesting dynamic there, because it was just two very different personalities coming together. And I never even met the husband. It was just all through the wife and those conversations. So that was a very curious thing. So again, having that investment strategy and risk management strategy conversation, which can be all kind of tied together in the kind of that third discussion. The fourth conversation that you need to be having is your goals. These are going to be both short-term and long-term, as well as individual and kind of team. So this could be couples, this could be family. And so one of the things that, I was just having a dinner with my wife a while ago, like a month or two ago, and we were talking about the future of our lives, and that she just said, I just envision us, we're going to be 65, we're going to have this beautiful home in the mountains, and we're going to be sitting there on the back patio with our kids and their kids. And I was like, whoa, it just blew my mind, because I guess I never really had that understanding that she had that vision for our family. That was always kind of my vision. And she, so we were able to kind of share this vision together of what 65 looks like, and we're not even 40. So we can start to think about and build toward what that future looks like. That. And the beauty is that it can be a changing, malleable type of discussion where, I've talked about in the past, rent the dream before you buy it. If you want to be on a sailboat, well, maybe it's wise to go sailing and, learn to sail and, rent a sailboat before buying it. So that's certainly some of those things. But again, the short stuff, in the next year, we want to have paid our credit cards off, as an example. Hey, that's a great, very good aspirational type of thing. Or a longer term where, you're saying, I want to retire at 55 and you're, 40. That's another little bit of a, longer term, but everybody needs to be on the same page, because if you have two people rowing against each other and they don't have some of the other conversations dealt with, which is, the relationship with money, kind of family history, you're not spending, saving, you're not budgeting in the right ways, and you're all over the place with your investment strategy, well, guess what? The goals stuff just doesn't work because your boat is being rowed in two different directions. And now there's a lot of things that are up in the air. So again, understanding those goals. And again, this is really easy, really great to facilitate with an advisor, but it's something that I would say that you should be doing on an annual basis. Really good to do right around the first of the year, where you can start goal setting, thinking about that, that restructuring, resetting, kind of, getting the gears in place there. And then looking at the past, like what did that look like last year? What were our goals, values there? Are they similar? Are they different? What do we kind of want to be projecting out for the future? So really cool way to do it there, understanding your goals. And then the last conversation that I think is really important for all couples to go through is roles in the financial management of the household. This is huge, really important. And I think I put it at the end because I do think it's something that, either can be at the front or it can be at the back. It really doesn't matter. But I have found that every household has different structures. And oftentimes you've got the COO, which is the Chief Operating Officer. This would be like my wife, right? She's making sure that our schedule's dialed in, we've got everything lined up. But then there's the CFO. And I would say that I'm more of a CFO role because I think my skills are well suited for that. But that's understanding the management, the financial management of the house, where money is being invested. And we stay on the same page. We try to inform each other, just like I need to know when dance drop off is, or when, this sleepover is, and all of these different things that are happening. My wife needs to understand where the money's going, what's happening, what does she want to do? She brought to me a couple of different investment options, and she was like, hey, I really want to do this. What do you think about that? And we were able to have a dialogue and a conversation around that, around what she wanted to do with those investment dollars. And it became a really cool thing because it gave her agency in the conversation, but it wasn't her just making the decision on her own. She was able to include me in that conversation. So understanding your role. And this is both big strategic stuff, but also the day-to-day. I have a client right now who's in their mid-60s, and he's having a little bit of a challenge because his wife has some serious medical issues, and she's not able to do the day-to-day accounting. And so this is bill pay, this is depositing checks, getting things in the right order. He's kind of big picture, this is kind of what we want to do. And then she kind of puts it all together. But they never really had a conversation around this defined roles of what that looks like. And so there was a lot of learning. There's a steep learning curve on how this works. And it was a pretty challenging transition to get to that point. But understanding those roles, I think, is really important because, again, if you're saying, hey, you do this, I do this, it allows efficiencies in how the operations are. And just so long as you have that communication, I think is really important. So across the board, the biggest takeaway here is strong communication and having the discussions. And as I mentioned, I do think it is important to have these discussions with another person involved, like a financial advisor, because it helps, maybe bring some of the emotional stuff down. Because again, a lot of people aren't having these conversations. And so what's happened is over the years, these small incremental things, spending, stuff like that, have added up, and there's been created some resentment and some challenges. And I've actually seen some points in time where it gets a little bit awkward and a little bit uncomfortable because there's some bad blood there, and that it's really great to kind of uncap that a little bit and open the dialogue. And this is, again, not just for the newlyweds. These are for people that have been married 10, 15, 20, 25 years that just have never put money at the forefront, because guess what? Our society doesn't encourage it. So with that, I'm open to discussions, love the conversations, and happy to help.